Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is February 23rd, 6 p.m., a little after 6. I apologize for the late delay. We had technical glitches with some software or with batteries. We'll get started. We do have a quorum present, and we'll start with Jay, if you'll state your name for the record.
Jay Perpaul.
Scott Gaither.
Adolphus Gaither.
Valerie Walhart.
Florine Phillips.
Let the record show that Mr. Mike Griswell is absent. We've all had an opportunity to review the minutes from the January 26th meeting. If anybody notes any errors or items that need to be corrected, please state so now. If none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as published.
I make a motion that the minutes be approved by our proper corrections, if there should be any.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with proper corrections if there should be any.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item was a public hearing for a zoning text amendment to adopt in the general commercial zoning district an outdoor event space. For those of you that are in attendance, there has been a advertising snafu with the newspaper. This item did not get advertised in time for the public hearing to be held. So we will not be holding a public hearing tonight. What this body may do is discuss some of the merits of the request, but there will not be a vote or a public hearing on the item. This item will have to be tabled into the March meeting. I believe Barbara was able to get this to us all in a timely fashion, what the request is about. Again, I don't, since we will have to table this till March, I don't think we need to go into too far depth about the ordinance or what it's proposed to do. We will have that staff report next month, but if there's any questions or any discussions about what we've read, now may be a good time to flesh out some ideas. Again, we won't be voting on this or holding a public hearing, just a simple discussion. If anyone would like to offer any items.
That's a pretty broad term, outdoor event space. And I don't know, what are some of the things that it would include, like weddings or?
Well, I agree with you. I looked at that, and I kind of looked at it very similar to our agritourism ordinance that we adopted a couple years ago, or not even a couple years ago, where it would allow outdoor events, kind of like an outdoor banquet facility. When I look at something like this, I look at how can it impact the use? How could that impact surrounding properties? How can we mitigate any nuisance that may occur? The staff is looking at this as potentially as a conditional use and not a permitted by right use, which would require the public hearing process and allow conditions to possibly be placed upon it. I look at this a little bit differently and think of terms of maybe a supplemental standards that say if you can meet X, Y, and Z, then yes, apply for a conditional use permit. Those would be like the minimum standards, things like minimum lot size requirement in order to accommodate for off-site parking, because when you have outdoor event space, while the intent may be benign, what we have to consider are anything that may accompany that has a negative connotation or a nuisance to adjacent properties. And that's something we definitely don't want to do, is create an ordinance that allows the use as a nuisance only to come back later on and think, geez, we really didn't think this through. So that's kind of some of the things I was thinking of, is those supplemental standards, that if you're going to apply for this, these are the minimum things you have to meet. And then the conditional use permit is a case-by-case basis. So if the conditional use permit comes before us and you say, okay, you can meet X, Y, and Z on these minimum supplemental standards, then you should be able to move forward and say, well, in your particular case, you need additional buffer because you might be the close proximity to residential. But one thing to keep in mind is that this would be an introducing a use in the general commercial district. So one thing we'd want to do is take a look at our zoning district, our zoning map, and say, okay, where is the general commercial district?
Right.
And what are those properties that surrounding it? How could this use, if it went on an abutting property, how could this use affect it negatively or positively? So it's not a one-size-fits-all. Does that answer your question sort of in a roundabout way? But yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. It would allow for weddings and any kind of outdoor, private or public event.
Okay. Yeah, that helps me some.
Anybody have any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, seeing no more questions or comments, we won't discuss this item any further until the March Planning Commission. It will be tabled. We cannot take a formal vote unless, Adele, are you comfortable with us taking a formal vote to table?
Oh, certainly, you could take a vote to table, but you are exactly correct that the item will have to be re-advertised and the public hearing will have to be held at the next meeting before action can be taken. I did just want to, for the record, note that the staff did place the ad with sufficient time.
Yes.
It was an
Right.
error in the publication, not an error in the staff's actions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for pointing that out for the record. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to table this request for text amendment of outdoor event space in the general commercial zoning district.
A motion to table this until the next meeting.
So we have a motion to table this request until the March Planning Commission meeting. Is
I
there-
second the motion.
And we have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Carries unanimously. Okay. Old business, work session. We talked about it last time. We have a work session March 8th at this building at 6 p.m. to discuss housing. Anything I need to include with that, Ms. Adele?
We'll be providing to you the surveys that we have received, the housing surveys, so that you all can review all of that information. And then beyond that, just some talking points. So the purpose of this work session is for the Planning Commission to provide some steering and some thoughts on direction going forward on housing. We are also working to develop, to analyze some data, and we'll see how much we can have available for you relative to housing, age of housing, value of housing within the social circle area from census data. Unfortunately, there's not a lot that is published yet for the last year, where things have changed quite a bit. But we'll bring that forward. So that's what we have for the work session, and it's not intended to be an end point, but a starting point.
Okay. And last month, I did mention that Amber McKibben, reached out to me about having a planning commission member serve on the redevelopment committee, and everyone volunteered you, Adolpha, since you weren't here. Hope you don't mind. I'm just kidding. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone volunteered, and I'm unable to commit to that. So there may not be a planning commission member serving on the redevelopment committee. Also, I know we talked last month just briefly about a potential dark sky ordinance and limiting the amount of lumens or amount of light that a development, commercial, residential type development can produce. I have to apologize. I've not been able to do any work towards that, research or drafting, between things at work and things at home. It's quite busy. But I will make it a point to have at least something to discuss or come back with in March with some findings about some direction that we may possibly move in. So with that, I do apologize for not having anything prepared for February. I don't have any new items. Barbara, are there any new items that we should be aware of?
No, sir, Chairman, we do have a educational program that's going to be on Zoom that we sent out in the newsletters, just to update if anybody asks you about those. It's on March the 2nd. That is put on by the GEC committee. They've gotten information from different vendors of how to become a homeowner and the steps you would take in that process. So if anybody hears that they would like to join in, everybody's welcome. It's at 7 o'clock, March the 2nd, and I can send it out to anybody that sends me an email, or it's in our newsletter, that flyer that was attached in there, given the information.
And that's for anybody to be able to dial in and participate?
Yes.
Would you mind emailing that to us, as while if some of us may know people who would be interested, that may be helpful, that we can pass it along?
I will. I'll send that to you.
Okay. And I do know that also in March, we tabled the preliminary plat or the construction plans for the subdivision on Memorial, Poplar Forest, thank you. That's coming back before us in March, as long as the applicant has gotten his information to the city in an adequate amount of time for the city to provide its review, as well as the city's engineer's review. Barbara has,
We do have the plan and the traffic study on the new proposal. I have not reviewed it. It's over to our engineers now.
okay,
They're looking at it, and Ms. Adele and I will go through it Friday. So
Excellent.
we'll have time to advertise, but
So-
we'll make sure it's complete.
I'm glad to hear that the applicant was able to get the information in an adequate amount of time. This will not put us or staff on the spot at the March meeting, so that they should be well aware of any changes they may need to make. Other than that, with no other new business, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Have a motion by Jay, second by Signora. All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. Motion is adjourned.